I'm going to be talking about the impact of multilateralism on climate change under the United Nations. And by way of definition, multilateralism is an alliance between two or more parties or countries. They have different agenda, multi-parties, multi-issues, but a common goal. And we know United Nations was created in 1945, and it's about the largest multilateral organization in the world. And climate change refers to change in the environmental condition of the earth. And basically, we go to the problems that is evolving in the world right now. We know that climate change is real, and these are the institutional framework put in place for climate change. All this legal framework, we are done with the institutional framework. The framework is IPCC. We have the Meteorological Organization. We have United Nations Environmental Program. These are the legal framework, institutional framework. And the legal framework, please, the slide for this one, please. I'll be fast. I'm doing my best. The legal framework is the Montreal Protocol, the UNCCC, the Kyoto Protocol, Paris Climate Agreement, which is the recent one. All these are environmental laws, laws that are seen to the fact that greenhouse gas emissions should be cut. These are laws that see to substances that are not good for the environment, curbing these substances. These are what those legal frameworks are for. They are to guard and to maintain our environment. Next slide, please. Now, another way that United Nations have helped in the issue of climate change is calling for climate action, building capacity, creating carbon markets, climate finance through Green Fund, Green Climate Fund, CDM, Clean Development Mechanism, Adaptation and Mitigation Fund. And recently, the issue of loss and damage is on the table, and then it's being contemplated. And I believe that positive results will still come out from loss and damage. Next slide, please. Yes, specific impact of United Nations in West Africa with regards to climate issues. And then we have countries like Zimbabwe, Benin, and Burkina Faso, Kigali in Rwanda, Nigeria. These are countries and more countries that have benefited from United Nations in area of empowerment, solar, in freezing down highly potential greenhouse gas use. All these countries have benefited from United Nations with regards to things that can curb climate countries. Now, these are the methodology. So I'll just go straight. It's to the results. Yes, no, we can move results. So, generally speaking, the public belief in climate emergency is high. People know that there is climate emergency, there is need for climate action, which calls for more organization, private, and even governmental organizations to come up and work hand in hand with United Nations to bring about results for climate purposes. Next slide, please. Next slide. This is still the same. Yes, 2/3 believe in climate emergency. Yes, and in our primary findings done with 122 participants in Ministry of Environment in Nigeria, and it's a good news. 100% have heard about climate change. Next slide. And majority believe that, next slide is saying some heard from television, some heard from universities during classes. And the majority believe that, yes, UN is doing something about climate change. They are positively impacted on climate change. But when it comes to whether or not UN is doing enough to combat climate change, we can see that about 43% said no, while some neither agree nor disagree. So the point is, yes, UN is doing something, but whether or not is enough is a question that stands hanging. Next slide, please. Yes, for UN to do enough, we look at the policies that can be adopted, and then the results of the policies are seen on the screen. Please, you can go to the next slide. And the policy findings report that people believe that conservation of forest and land should come first in terms of aid, in terms of help. So conservation of land, use of solar, renewable, climate-friendly farming techniques, and investment in green businesses. These are the order in which United Nations should come in wherein they want to help. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we did some interview with some persons who are climate experts, and generally speaking, the result is United Nations is doing something about climate change, particularly in the area of funding. They have positively impacted on climate change in Africa and in some poor nations that are unable to fund green projects. United Nations have helped. But then there is mistrust, in the sense that there are some countries that have made pledges with regards to adaptation and mitigation fund, and they are yet to remit these pledges. These have caused some kind of doubt in faith with respect to United Nations. So yes, there is mistrust with the multilateral system when it comes to climate change. And when there is mistrust, people would not want to be committed through their emphasis. So for people to be more committed to their nationally determined contribution, they have to be trust in the fact that there is common but differentiated responsibility. So if I'm doing my responsibility in Africa, trying to curb emissions in Africa, trying to stop the use or reduce the use of fossil fuel, they want United Nations to also instigate developed countries to also do their bid. Because when the question was asked, the answer that we got was that they will only do this when developed countries are doing this. So it's a common responsibility. They expect that everybody's hand should be on deck. And then in conclusion, climate change is real. And then for people to come on board totally, there must be trust and respect for principle of equal rights, financial independence, and more inclusive United Nations where there is equity and belongingness, not people being differentiated, like feeling separated. These are developed, these are developing countries. There should be unity of purpose and sense of belonging so that parties to United Nations will feel that responsibility themselves, that there is need to come together to actually curb climate change. And then there is more need for finance, particularly for poor nations and developing nations, technology transfer and capacity building. And there should be massive grassroots campaign on climate change, massive in the sense that you can speak individual language while talking about climate change. Children can be reached through cartoons and a simple way of teaching them education on climate change. And with this, I'll come to the conclusion, if there are more inclusive United Nations where people feel a sense of belonging, and it will interpret into a respect and actualization of nationally determined contribution for all nations. And then, yes, when it comes to global challenges such as climate change, according to Xi Jinping, multilateralism is and will always be the best prescription. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia, for your presentation. Thank you. Thank you. Well said. Climate change is a collective responsibility.